Welcome to Scarves and Spikes.
Hello to all the Atlanta United fans. My name is Jurgen Damm, and you are watching Scarves and Spike, an Atlanta United podcast.
What's going on, everybody? It's another episode of Scarves and Spikes, and it is post-Leagues Cup or mid-Leagues Cup edition, depending on what point of view you're looking from. It's going to be me and Tommy tonight. Sydney is off having a good old time, and we're going to be joined in a little bit by none other than Jason Longshore. So lots to talk about, lots of Atlanta stuff to talk about, lots of other stuff to talk about, as Tommy's shirt may hint at. But Tommy, what's going on, buddy?
I'm lucky to be here. Like, most of the north part of Ohio was hit by tornadoes, bad storms. We've got thousands of people without power here. So now people are coming to our house because we have power. I came home from a work lunch, and I have my sister-in-law and my screaming nephews over there, and it's been a fun time.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, hopefully don't blow away.
It's over now. It's just cleaning up, and yeah, it's gross.
Yeah, I hope everybody affected by the tropical storm / hurricane that went through kind of like South Georgia, Florida. Hope you guys are okay. I know we have some listeners down that away. But yeah, so let's dive into it. Obviously, you guys know the drill. Go check out scarvesandspikes.com. Got all the news. Got some news that we're going to talk about here in a little bit. Rumors more than news. But yeah, go check out the articles. Henry is actually working on a cool article now that covers Rodrigo Neri, who is one of the Two's newest additions. He's a striker for the Two's. Actually came from Valencia. Came over from Spain, already with 2 goals and an assist, and just flying high in the month that he's been here. So he's gonna have some cool stuff coming out. Y'all go check out the website, the shop web part of the website. Get yourself a mug or maybe a beer glass to help survive the next 3 weeks, or get you a hat. But and then Patreon, as usual, patreon.com/scarvesandspikes, because we got stuff going out on there, and it helps us immensely. But there it is.
Can we start? Can I start the conversation?
Let's go.
About
Let's
Sunday?
dive into it.
We're going to open this with a comment from Jack. We're back. Okay, according to Garth. Now look, Sydney and I talked about this last week when you were out. Look, I get that you're excited. I'm excited, right? Miranchuk seems like a great signing. We got some rumors of a potential attempt of a signing, right? Of a winger. Obviously, we're all very excited. But when you start going on the radio and you start yelling that we're back, just that line, it's going to stick in people's heads. And then you come out on Sunday, 6 days later, and you play that game, it's going to get thrown back at you. It's going to get thrown back at you hard. And that was not being back. That was a terrible performance. And unfortunately, there's been so many of these non-MLS games, the Battery, the 11, this game, they're some of the worst games I've ever watched as an Atlanta United fan. All 3 of those. They were bad. They were just, they're unwatchable. Like, at the end of the game, I feel bad for myself that I watch this game, right? And you have to. There's got to be a change. There's got to. We need we need something, and I hope Miranchuk is that. But man, I mean, it seems like this team needs a lot more to really be able to get ramped up and going.
Yeah, I mean, I think my one defense for Garth is, the guy that he was exclaiming "We're back" about hasn't played, but that's kind of beside the point. Like it was obviously it's very bad timing. That game sucked. That game sucked. It really was frustrating. It was, I mean, Nick saying it in the chat, I struggled to even talk about the game when it ended. It was so uninspiring. And then we'll get to some other comments from you guys, and y'all drop your comments in the chat, because this is going to be kind of a free flowing episode. We're going to have Jason on here. We're going to talk. Omar, I know we really didn't want to talk
I
about
tried
it.
to talk about it, Omar. I tried to.
We kind of
I
have
tried
to,
just
at least temporarily.
pretend.
It's
We have
part of the
we have like a
venting
10-minute mark that we are going to stop ourselves at.
Yeah, it's a venting session for me, because look, I wasn't at the game. We had I gotta say congratulations to my brother-in-law. Their baby was born, but it was a busy weekend, so I wasn't able to make it to the game. Watched it at home, and I was legitimately pissed when I got done watching this game, because it was like uninspiring is a good word. Poor is a good word. There's so many, like, unfortunately negative terms that you could use to describe the overall performance from the team that day. And what makes it worse is you weren't playing a good team. You're playing a crappy team. Like, you're playing an objectively bad team in Santos Laguna. And you go out and you drop a performance like that. You play to the level. Atlanta tends to play to the level of their competition, and then it becomes a crapshoot. You randomly beat teams you have for years. You randomly beat teams you have no business probably beating, and then you lose to teams that you should absolutely walk all over. And Santos Laguna is one of those. Like, you shouldn't be happy with making it 0-0. I mean, cool. Like, the defense, they've kept a clean sheet. Like, that's cool and all, but also against a team that decided they were going to take shots from like 35 yards out and just has nobody on their team that can really score goals. No open play goals in months.
It almost worked.
Yeah. And it's just frustrating, man. Like, I get irritated. I was irritated that day. I know the fans are irritated, and honestly, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing for a club that is as big as Atlanta United to go out and drop that kind of performance on the, I don't want to say on the world stage. It's Leagues Cup. Not everybody's watching Leagues Cup. I get it. But a thing that they're trying to advertise is this, like, cross league promotion, everything else. It was embarrassing to go from, I mean, literally, look, I know a lot can happen in the soccer world, but 5 years ago, you played Club America in Mercedes-Benz Stadium and won Campeones Cup, and you played them hard. 5 years later, you play one of the worst teams in Liga MX at home, and you lose. Well, you make it to penalties, and then you lose. It's frustrating. It's so frustrating. And I don't know that one player or even two players is going to change it. Now, I will stand by the fact, and I said it this morning on Soccer Down Here with John, if you go after, you got Miranchuk, then if you go and you get a winger, whoever that may be, those are playmakers. Those are guys that can potentially elevate those around them. Strikers have a harder time elevating the players around them because they have to get the ball from somebody. They can't just conjure the ball out of thin air. So if you have an attacking midfielder and a winger that you bring in, maybe they can make Daniel Rios and or Jamal Tiari better until the winter transfer window, where you can actually bring in a third DP. But all that's in the future. Right now, you should have beat this team with the team that you have right now in front of you, and you didn't. And now you're out of Leagues Cup and out of yet another potential trophy opportunity. I know it was very unlikely that they made it that far.
Ever. Well, I mean, you should have. You had 2 games at home, right? You were the team to host both games,
yeah,
right? And the other team was on extremely short rest. Like, this was laid out to you, right? They played Wednesday. We didn't play since Friday night, so we had 8 days off to form a game plan here against this team. and it never looked good at any point. There was maybe a very small, I mean, a couple obvious chances that they had. I mean, Saba had the one opportunity, and there was maybe a chance or half a chance or two in the first half, but it never seemed like it was going to happen. And then, right, yeah, with that amazing save there in the second half where they just shot it from far and he made a fingertip save. Like, it reminded me of the Toronto goal that was allowed. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
like, and I almost wish that just happened at that point. Like, just yeah, and it's how I felt about the Battery game, and I think a lot of people felt the same. It was like the Battery game we were watching, and it was like, is anything going to happen with this team at all? Like, is anything going to happen? We were just getting dominated, and Santos started growing into that game real late, and then all of a sudden they started getting some opportunities, and it was, we're just going to lose this, aren't we? And this all just comes at a bad time because, you had the supporters group talk about the season ticket increase. You've got all the talk about Leagues Cup and everyone hating on Leagues Cup. And then it's this. I hope things turn around. Look, last year we were all very negative, very, very negative going into the last part of the season. You brought in Silva, you brought in Saba. Miamba came in a little bit before, and things changed. Things turned around. I don't think that can happen here. I'm hoping it does, obviously, because we've got to watch all these games and hope that we get a better product from here. But really, I this should be a just who's going to be here, right? You're playing for your jobs. I mean, obviously you can sell some of these players, you have buyouts, you have player options, all these things. I mean, really it's just looking to see who is going to be here next year. And I'm just going to say it. We talked about it on Spaces. Like we just keep saying the same things year after year after year, right? It's that, coming out flat, playing down to your opponent, allowing goals from the start. I know that didn't happen in this one, but what I'm talking about, like the same things that we were talking about, the trends that this team has seen. And as much as I love Rob and what it is, I feel like this franchise just needs a reset, a new voice to come in here to just completely change everything up, right? Because I mean, I understand that Rob's been here with Pineda and all of a sudden Rob's been here before that. But I think you just need someone brand new to come in here and come in with different ideas and tell everybody it's a clean slate. And obviously, you have a chance to revamp this roster, right? A lot this year. We've talked about this so many times. There's so many possible roster spots opening, U22s, DPs, players that are out of contract, options that might not be picked up. Like, you have so much room to switch this. Switch this roster around to change things. I'm hoping that they get it right. And, I don't think we have an update at all. And maybe I'm wrong, but I haven't heard any updates about this coaching search here. And if they haven't hired anyone, that's my only real disappointment. I understand this team's bad right now. I understand that they've got a lot of holes that they got to fill for next year. But they're doing a disservice, I think, in my opinion. They're doing a disservice to themselves and doing a disservice to the fans if they are not out there looking and talking to other managers out there immediately. And I say this only because you do have all this roster turnover coming up, right? It's August, all right? December is going to be here before you know it, right? And you got to start looking things up. If you hire a guy in September, he doesn't have to manage this team at all, right? Or October. Like, he doesn't have to manage this team. He could be in the background helping get the list together of the people that he wants, because we should see a lot of signings. We should see a ton of signings this winter, you would think, because I don't think a lot of these options are going to get picked up. And, right, the next transfer window, they're already looking, right? I know they're focused on the next week or whatever, but still, there's got to be people there right now are looking at the next window because you are going to have such a high turnover.
Yeah, I mean, you have, 9 players potentially that you could not pick up options on, depending on, how things go.
This is the biggest reset of Atlanta United ever, right? This will be the biggest reset.
Yeah.
Of any offseason that you have. Like, this is the thing that we've talked about for years, of contracts that we've had that maybe aren't the friendliest, right? That have been given out over the years, and that you really need a reset of some of these guys. We've had Ibarra and Sosa just sitting around on other teams performing, and unfortunately, we can't use any U22s really in our lineup besides Mascara. Like, we need those spots. Other teams are using their U22s in these games, getting results because of them. We don't have that right now. And I know we have Mascara. He's been injured most of the season, so you really don't have a lot to go with him, and he really hasn't done much. But still, I mean, we had two midfielders there. I mean, any depth, like, we have no depth this year either. We really don't, right? Like, it's thin. And if you had, like, right now, I would take an Ibarra or Sosa to help out on this team any day.
Wow.
We just don't have it.
Go tell 2023 Tommy that what you just said.
It's just we the cap and all that has been blame. I know there's who everyone's going to blame on it, and we've blamed him as well. But you've got to get it figured out this season. But really, the only thing you really got to go figure out is being like, yeah, no, we pass.
Yeah.
Go. You can go. You can leave. Like, that's fine. Like, you need to figure this out here. And that's why I'm trying to be positive, right? On Spaces, I did not expect us to go on Twitter Spaces until 8:00, I think it was. Like, we went late, and I told my wife, like, we went for a walk. I walked 6 miles, the start of Spaces to the end. I was out of breath there for a while. We also hired an intern. Jonathan came in, this young kid came in, and he was laying some fire on Spaces. So shout out to Jonathan if he's listening. We hired him. Now the Henrys of 21 age, we needed to get an intern. So Jonathan's our new intern. Surprise.
He's moved out of the 21 spot.
Yeah, but like that, we haven't been able to talk much about games and Spaces because nobody wants to talk about it, right? So you got to talk about what the positives are. And people came in with positives and people came with negatives. People are concerned. Well, we were in this situation before and this person put us in this position and he's still here. Okay. But obviously he's got better resources. He's got a mentor with Garth Lagerwey, like different things like that. And then, you had Gus in there with this, you could hear him typing on the keyboard, typing in the math of like players of how much salary cap we could do. It's fun. It's fun to talk about the future. It sucks that it's August 7th and like we're already looking towards next year. But that's what we have, right? And if we make the playoffs, if somehow this happens, cool. Then you get potentially 2 extra games, and that's great. And if we continue to fall, we'll have a super draft party, right? Super draft party. Everybody loves a super draft party.
And an expansion.
We could do our mock draft. Oh, if we ever do a mock super draft thing, I'm leaving the podcast. Just so you know. If we ever do that, I'm done. I'm
beyond sicko stuff.
Yeah, we'll get intern Jonathan on here. He could talk about it, but I'm done. Jonathan and Henry can handle the mock draft.
That can be a youth episode.
Oh man.
I mean, look, I get it, and I think we can put on our journalism pundit hats for a minute, and which we do, and we talk about the team, and we go back and we cover the match, but then you kind of sometimes have to put on your football manager hat and have a little bit of fun and just try to figure out like what could the front office be doing? What do you think the front office should be doing? And that's kind of, I think, where the fan base is at. And those that aren't doing that, unfortunately, have become apathetic about the team. They are not giving it the attention that they normally do because they don't feel like it deserves it. They're not giving the money that they normally do because they don't feel they deserve it. And so it is, it's a sad thing to see. You just have to hope that you are in the trough of sorrow and the very bottom, and that this is rock bottom, and that whether you make another move in this window, which the fan base is hoping for, but whether you do or not, you've got to come out on fire in 2025 if you want to have any chance of really getting everybody back on track. And by everybody, I mean the entire organization, fan base, city, everybody. This is it's a tough time, and it's not all doom and gloom. It's really not, because you are sitting on a treasure trove of money on top of an owner that doesn't mind spending money. So you've got things to be excited about. If Rob doesn't work out, and look, man, I love Rob, but the results just haven't been there. And we had the same conversation about Pineda. Like, the results weren't there. Rob, I feel like, has been thrown into a crappy situation. You have no DPs on the field. I mean, unless you want to count Gregerson, but you don't have any true DPs, I think, for what it's worth, on the pitch. You have Saba, who was a DP, and you've got a mixture of a couple of TAM strikers and then a left winger who unfortunately just hasn't been doing the job. He has not been living up to what he did last year. And then a midfield kind of in like constant rotation. So there are a handful of I think, foundation pieces going forward that you don't do anything to change. But there is a lot of quote unquote fat that will need to be cut from this team going forward. Because while I do think maybe a coach, the right coach, could come in and maybe do something different here, I don't know that it's all fixable just by a coach coming in.
No, but it's a big part of it, for sure. I think when you have a franchise, sometimes it just takes a new person to come in and really change it, right? Change the atmosphere, change what's been kind of the old guard here for a long time, right? And I mean, Pineda's been here for a while, obviously. A lot of these players have been here for a long time. And now you're, to put in the 90s kids terms, it's going to be like Saved by the Bell of the new class next year, right? And yeah, I mean, that's just what's so important here, is that you do get this chance now. I mean, yeah, Omar, 10-player contracts will end the winter with option years. Like, I don't think yikes, and I don't know if that's a good yikes or a bad yikes. I think it's a good thing, right? Because we've seen the performances that we've gotten here. And being able to bring in these new guys, bringing in a new manager, and having this all come together here, I mean, that's what you need. And teams have done that, right? And you've seen teams you've seen Cincinnati go from the bottom of the barrel all the way up to the top, right? It's possible. And obviously, they're swinging for the fences with these DPs, right? You got to get the DPs right. 100%, you got to get those right. But then you got the U22s, and then you've got your depth, right? And they've got that.
Yeah, and like I said, the foundation pieces. You've got things that you can work with, but you definitely, and you said it earlier, you're definitely looking at a very crucial transfer window, and it's so frustrating talking about that transfer window when we're still in the middle of the summer transfer window. But you do have an opportunity to really flex your analytics and scouting muscles and go find some guys that maybe do fit whatever system, whatever identity you want to implement in the future. And yeah, and I see what Zilf is saying. A good coach will definitely help the team. There's currently no passion in the team. I mean, I don't know that I would say there's no passion in the team. I think Rob definitely, brings a very distinctively Rob form of passion. But I also just think he's in a tough situation. And yes, I think maybe a total change, maybe that is something that has to happen. I don't know, but you could come out of Leagues Cup, you could come out of the break, and Atlanta could go on and Rob could have these 3 weeks to fix something, put his finger on whatever it is that this team is missing, and go forward and do really well in the rest of the season. Then you have a tougher decision to make. But right now, if we're looking at the results, it's not been there. It's not been good enough. So that's enough of us playing Football Manager and trying to figure out what we can do if we were in Garth Lagerwey's shoes. And there is a reason we're not. But
Because we weren't interviewed. We didn't apply. We didn't
we
put our resumes in.
we did not. You're absolutely right. That would go in the
I
burn
used
pile
to be really
quicker.
good at like FIFA, like making my team, and now I've retired and now I'm in NCAA football. I've been doing recruiting. I've been practicing really hard at it. So I think I might retire from FIFA and
I hope you put
become
me
a
in the
full-time
transfer portal.
NCAA recruiter.
I don't want to play for you, traitor.
Sorry.
All right. With that being said, we have a very special guest. No introduction needed. Mr. Jason Longshore himself.
What's up, y'all?
What's going on, man?
Hey.
Not much.
So we've been kind of on a roller coaster. This is a very free form episode. We decided to take the show notes and throw them out the window and just discuss because
Fair enough.
we have 3 weeks, but before we kind of dive into it, tell everybody what you've been up to.
Too much. Atlanta United 2 went to Huntsville for that match. We had the game on 92.9 on Saturday night. I think people got their money's worth with that one. 3 goals in the first half for Atlanta, 2 in the second half. So it got really interesting late. Alan Carlton with golazos. I mean, it was a fun night in Kennesaw. The game in Huntsville was really good too. I've really enjoyed everything going on with Atlanta United 2 right now. I'll be heading out to training tomorrow. We're working on a feature that'll be coming out on SDH. The last couple of days, I was at Georgia State's media days for their men's and their women's teams. Aaliyah Fadul was named the Sun Belt Offensive Player of the Year for preseason on the Sun Belt first team. Had a chance to talk to her, talk to the captains of both teams, talk to the coaches of both teams. So we'll have season previews coming out as college soccer is already underway with preseason games. It's just nonstop, like absolutely nonstop at the moment. Even with the first team being stopped in Leagues Cup, it's not like it stops for me. I'll be running around doing all kinds of stuff.
Well, thanks for hanging out with us.
Yeah. Anytime.
And here's the thing. I got to say this real quick. Omar put this in the chat, and I don't ever want you to feel as if this is true. He said, why is it Jason only comes on the show when the team's doing bad? That is not planned. I promise I would never do that to you, Jason.
I see how it is. Omar figured it out.
I know I got to give a quick shout out too, because we've talked about it on here, and I know me and you've talked about it a lot. Between the 2 outlets, between Soccer Down Here and Scarves and Spikes, by the end of this season, we will have covered, I think, every single Twos player that is on the roster, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think so.
That might be. Maybe I'm just like tooting our horn a little bit, but that might be like a first.
No, it is a
for an
first.
MLS team.
It's got to be a first for an MLS second team. I know it's a first for the Twos.
Yeah.
It's something that we've always wanted to do more of, and we've been lucky to bring Maddie on this year, Madison Cruz. If y'all have seen our content, you've seen her work, and she's been outstanding. And I think where she really thrives is telling stories and interviewing players and getting to know them and getting past the X's and O's and getting to know them as people. And she has done a great job for us in getting to tell some of these stories. We had a great conversation with Matt Edwards a while back. He was just I think with the Twos, what's been really cool is like, this is just a good group of guys. And I know there's lots of narratives out there about Atlanta United 2 and just second teams in general, and their narratives, like, they're not true. They're not accurate. Second teams are not judged in anything resembling like the first team is. And they're not purely U16 teams either, because if you do that, you're setting the kids up to fail. You're not going to actually develop them. You need a mix of guys. You need to sometimes take L's on the field because you needed a guy who is going to get minutes with the first team down the road. He's got to get a game here. You got somebody coming back from an injury, or you're limited to somebody for 45 minutes because they're going to play with the first team 3 days later, or a million different things, or the U17s. And this is the other side of it that I don't think people really understand and grasp. The U17s, Ashton Gordon was away with them quite a bit this season. That's a good thing. That's progress. That's what you want, because
Aiden Torres is another one.
Aiden Torres, same. Cooper Sanchez, same. You want guys to go up and down because when they go up and they're into the first team, they're the kids. There's no expectations on them there. When they go down and they're with their age group team, there's big expectations there and they have to learn how to play that way. You have to be in different situations to grow as a person. And sometimes you have to be in those uncomfortable situations where you're the new guy to grow. But then you have to take that growth and come back into a group of your peers and go and dominate. And you want guys to see how they adjust. And that's something I've talked to Steve Cook a lot about this year is how guys handle changing level, changing group. Do they need a long period of adjustment? Do they just hit the ground running? Do they put blinders on and they just get it done? And I think more and more you're seeing academy guys come through that can handle that and do it. So the second team is there to develop players. It's a situation where if you can win championships, it's great. If you can win games week to week, it's great. They've won back to back, and it's been
Yeah.
really good to see because for the individuals, for the people, they get that reward because a lot of times you don't see the reward of that work you're putting in with a second team because it's not about results. It is, but it isn't. Like whistle to whistle, it absolutely is. But big picture, you're not going to do something to get a result in an MLS Next Pro game that would jeopardize a player's development or opportunity with the first team or take away an opportunity for them to go be expected to carry an academy team. So it is kind of a thankless task. And I think so often the people that just are so involved in these players developing aren't there to see the reward of it. You know, Jack Collison had a huge hand in Caleb Wiley's development, for example. Stephen Glass had a huge hand in Caleb Wiley's development. They're not with the club anymore, but that doesn't take away from what they did. And to do that role, you have to understand that and you have to swallow that at times. I think where I always come from with it, and it's why I love second teams and academies and player development and telling the stories of it. I love seeing the progression, but I always remember, and it's an Argentine youth coach that nobody knows who they are. I don't remember his name, but he had this quote translated that it's not about the trophies that I win. It's about the jerseys of the players who go into the first team and beyond. It's about that. And that's what it is for Steve Cook. That's what it is for the academy coaches. Of course, there's moments where you want to win the game that is in front of you, but big picture, it's about the people and it's about developing them to their fullest.
We've seen a lot of it this year. Obviously,
Yeah.
you know, I think the two standouts that, and it's funny because we have this conversation a lot on here. I know I have it with you. I know y'all have it on Soccer Down Here, but like Noah Cobb and Efrain Morales are not new guys, right? Like they've been around. And if you pay attention to the twos or even the academy back in the day, you would see something there that you could tell was special. And there's a reason that they made that jump. And now to be fair, I don't know that anybody saw them making that much of an improvement. And that's not a knock on them, but they've gone from day one, like they've hardly put a foot wrong. And
I think Noah's development was a little more of a straight line. I think when he went into the team at 15, there were some pretty big expectations. Not unfair pressure like put on him, but he was a guy that was seen as he could be something special. And I think he's really shown that this year. Efra, I give him so much credit for what he's done because his development has absolutely not been a straight line. He got the contract and he was very young and he's had a ton of injuries and he couldn't stay on the field. And I mean, literal growing pains as he just kept growing. And he was a 6 when he was a kid. He's still a kid, but he's now a really seasoned center back. And the jump that he's made, I think it feels faster because of when he was 16, when he was 17, even the start of when he was 18, it felt like he just kept getting hurt and he couldn't stay on the field.
Yep.
Then he got more games in 22 and was able to play consistently. 23, he made a pretty sizable jump. I think Steve Cook has had a really big influence on Efrain Morales. And to see him this season be able to jump into first team duty and handle it, I think, really, really well. It's a credit to him. It's a credit to his personality and his character.
Yeah, for sure. So, I like it. Like we said, we're gonna be kind of all over the place, but
We can bounce wherever you want to bounce.
hey, well, we'll bounce because we had people saying, please don't talk about it, but we have to. We just got to get your
Oh,
opinion. We
I
just
thought
have
we
to
were
get
done
your
with
opinion.
this.
What are we talking about?
We just got to get your opinion
Sunday.
on the most previous first team rollout, and just what did you think of the overall performance?
It wasn't a good game. I mean, it felt like two teams that were afraid to lose. I mean, it's both ways. Santos wasn't very good either. It happens in knockout games sometimes where you don't have I don't know if it's confidence coming in. I don't know if it's a killer instinct. I don't know. It's different probably in each situation and different for each individual, I would say. But they weren't good enough to win in 90. Santos wasn't either. I don't know if either team really had much control of the game. Probably Atlanta's best spell was early in the second half. I thought the move where Saba came inside was good. I thought that worked for a little while. I mean, I wish Rios hadn't been injured. I think Rios has been at a very, very good level for this group and makes a lot of things fit right now. But they weren't good enough. And, in a game where you needed to go win and grab the game, they didn't. And I don't know exactly why. Again, like it to me, it felt like two teams that were afraid of making mistakes. Which when you're in a knockout game, one mistake can kill you. So like I get it. I've seen it, been around the block enough times to see that game play out. They just weren't good enough on the day, period. And it's got to be better going forward. I think, like, to go past just the 90 minutes in that game, I think the biggest thing for me that I want to see more of going forward, and getting Moranchuk in is going to help for sure. Obviously, I mean, you're going to have more chances created. It's just that's what he does. But I want to see this team control games more. However they get to that point, however they control it, because you can control a game with more possession, with less possession. You can control a game with pressing, with not pressing. You can control a game with sitting deep and nullifying everything and then killing the opponent on the counter. You can do it a million different ways. But I feel like for a while now, this team hasn't had control in games. And games have been very 50-50 and coming down to mistakes either way. I think the last one that I really think of, because Columbus was a great result, but they didn't have control in that game. That's two wonderful set pieces and a really good scrappy performance. I mean, it was a good win, but control is different than result. And in my opinion, and I don't know. I mean, again, you can define control a lot of different ways. So that's the important part here. But in my opinion, if you have more control of games, you're going to get more results. However, your control leads you to success. Like, again, it can be pressing, it can be possession, it can be counter, it can be bunker. I mean, all those things can lead to control. Whatever you do to control a game should give you a better opportunity to succeed and get more results. When you're not controlling games, they're more toss-ups. And this, to me, this club has always been, even when results haven't been there, have been more often than not controlling games. And not purely possession. I know a lot of people connect those two things. It's not. Control can be different. Philly controls a lot of games without possession.
Yeah.
A lot of teams do. It's how you control it. But this is a team that has always wanted to control, and I think be in control of their destiny in the result. And too often lately, it hasn't been. I think the last half where I really felt like this team was in control was at RSL, where I really loved that first 45 from the team in that game. Yeah, they conceded very early, and that was bad. And it was a mistake where you get beat in a 1v1. I think McCarty gets beat. Everything starts to fall apart. Then you got up and you got a goal back. And were you great in that game? No, but by what you did, and I'm saying first half, second half, just
Yeah.
like Columbus, you gave up 3 goals
Yep.
on set pieces. You
Yep.
know, like you did RSL control the game? Probably not. They scored 3 goals on set pieces. In that first half, you didn't control it purely with possession. You controlled it with how you defended. They didn't let RSL get to their front four. So they took away RSL's offense and then started to break them down. They got them frustrated. They started to turn the ball over. Counter pressure and pressure without the ball started to pay dividends. That was one where it felt like, okay, this is I can see something coming here. This is brewing. This is good. The second half makes you forget that, but that to me is the last one where I really feel like, man, there's something coming. There's something growing here, and there's control. And I looked for that Sunday. I think it was needed on Sunday to get the result, and it really just wasn't there in any form. I don't think the team. I mean, and I know when results are like they are right now, I get it. People on the outside are gonna yell and say that people aren't trying hard enough. There's no passion, or there's no effort, or they're not trying, or they're not working. Like all those kinds of things. These are professionals. This is what they do. And they are in no way going out there and not trying to win. Like it's foolish to even go down that road. We're wasting time going down that road. They need to find a way with the group that they have, adding Moranchuk and hopefully adding more to control games more. And if you do that, you'll be more successful. I just don't know. I don't know what that blueprint is yet. And it's hard to even like hold it against, Rob and the staff for you not seeing it right now because you haven't had that 10. And in the way that I think Atlanta wants to play, the way that generally they have, and it's looked different with different 10s because they have different personalities, that player's very important. And I don't think you've been able to find a way to get that same level of control without it. So I really hope Moranchuk can give you some of that. But if it doesn't happen immediately, you've got to find another way to have more control in games to get more results, or we're kind of crossing our fingers and looking for mistakes and trying to create mistakes and prevent them on our end. And that's kind of what it turns into.
Well, I was listening to the full-time report on Monday, and you talked a little bit about it, and I think you when you were talking about like once if it takes him a little bit of time to come in, right, and get used to the country, get used to everything here, and on last year everybody came out of the Leagues Cup break, right? You brought in 2 new wingers, Mayumba, and things went flying quick.
Mm-hmm.
And I think fans are really hoping that. And one of the things I'm nervous about is a couple bad games or a couple games of him getting used to it. Like you just unfortunately don't have the time now, right? You're in a worse situation in the standings, and fans want wins, right?
Yeah, I think anybody around it does, and you've got to find a way to get him as comfortable and as fitted in as you can, as quickly as you can. And I think it's a harder ask because of the type of player he is and the type of position he plays. I think for Muyumba, he came in and he got the Leagues Cup game before, which helped a little bit, and he had more time training with the team. Wingers, it's a little bit more, and it kind of goes back to the control discussion. Like wingers, it's a little bit more 1v1, a little bit more ISO. You're trying to get them into positions where they can just do their thing in a isolated part of your team, or you can create isolation for them to make them comfortable. When you're the 10 and you got to play through that guy, you're gonna have to find him a lot. You're gonna have to get him on the ball a lot. He's gonna have to find space a lot. That takes time. That's the kind of stuff that takes chemistry and takes time. Hopefully, he is a talented enough player, and I think a smart enough player that you can bridge some of those gaps while you're figuring it out. I think one of the things in kind of getting to know Alexi that jumped out to me was a conversation that Eric Abidal had after he left Barcelona. Barcelona was pretty heavily in for Moranchuk before he went to Atalanta. And Abidal talked about going and meeting with his representatives, meeting with the club, talking numbers. They really liked him. But when it got down to the numbers, one, Barca wasn't in a great financial position at that time because this was summer of the pandemic.
Yep.
But two, they said that when they really started to examine, is this where we need to spend our money? They felt like they had players coming that gave them similar things. Those two players are Gavi and Pedri. They loved what Moranchuk gave them in terms of technical, or would have given them in technical ability, and kind of his soccer IQ, his vision, his awareness on the field, all those things. And they felt like, you know what, we can get Gavi and Pedri in, and we don't need to spend the money here. We need to spend the money somewhere else. So that was 2020. It's 2024 now. I don't think he has regressed as a player. I don't think he's forgotten how to play. I think,
Right.
He's not a guy that's going to stand out to you athletically. I think he's going to stand out to you with his left foot, which is magical. 10s that are left-footed are always interesting to me. You don't see as many of that.
Unicorns.
Yeah, it's such a unique thing, and I think that at times it gives you an extra half second because defenders are like, what's happening?
Why are you on the wrong foot?
Yeah, why are you going there? But I think, you can, and this is going to be down to the coaching staff, like, you've got to find the best way to get him as comfortable as possible, as quick as possible. And with his ability to play on the wing, that does give you another option if that makes him fit in a little bit faster and doesn't really derail you. He played a decent bit with Atalanta coming off of the right wing, cutting inside on his left foot. And you think to how New England has used Carlos Heel, for example. I mean, that's the one that I always think of, where he'd be listed as a right winger, but he never played there. He popped inside and turned it into a diamond. And then you had a left-sided winger who was completely free to do whatever. He could come up as a second forward. He could come inside as well and really overload the middle. So that gives you a possibility. And I really think what it's going to come down to is, one, the timing to get him in here. Two, if the other designated player deal gets done, whoever that is, and then where they play and how all the pieces fit. There's a lot of stuff up in the air with how quick you can get the best from Moranchuk. And we probably won't see the absolute best until next year. And that's, I think, fair. I mean, to expect something different is unfair. Can he be good enough to come in and help you win games right now, though? Yeah, he can, because if you look at this team and you take the emotion out of it for a minute, and everybody gets emotional about games, I understand it. Take that out for a second and you look back at these games. RSL, it's not even an outlier, again, because of the way you conceded the three goals, but that's the only real bad result in terms of not being in the game. And you were in that game for a long period of time. This team hasn't been far off. I don't feel like they have been all season long. I don't feel like they have been under Rob. Can getting Moranchuk in, hopefully, along with a second impact player, and whether that player's coming from a different position or that player's a 9, getting consistent goals. Kind of been getting them, honestly, with the exception of Sunday. I mean, what more do you want from Daniel Rios? What more do you want from Jamal TRA when he's been healthy? Like, those guys have delivered. It's been other positions that have been not delivering. And I keep looking to the left wing. I mean, you can look at the numbers from that side and whoever it's been, because it's been a whole lot of different people all season long trying to find it. That's been an issue. I think Saba has lived up to his end of it. Thiago obviously did before he was transferred. Yorgos was hurt most of his time here this season, but Rios and TRA have absolutely delivered everything you need out of the 9. It's been that left side, and it's been in different cycles, like weird mistakes defensively or weird turnovers that have hurt you. So it's not far off, and hopefully Moranchuk can be the one that kind of connects the dots.
It was all downhill after the Spider-Man mask.
Man, it's crazy. And what I kept saying it on Sunday, and I think it is very important to say, and it kind of goes back to, again, that thing that we can all do when we get emotional and it clouds our judgment and we just get mean. people will start questioning players' professionalism and their mentality and all these things when they're not playing well. Sean De Silva's not playing well. And I mean, that's just been the case more often than not this year. But he has never stopped working for
Yeah.
this team. And in games like Sunday, where he was trying. He was trying all kinds of different things to make impact plays, and it just was not coming off. He still kept running. He still kept pressing. He still kept defending. He was dropping deep to defend when he had to. He was winning the ball back high up the field. That's the kind of player that you have to respect. And it's the kind of player who gets more opportunities to get it right as well, because you know where they're not maybe helping you win things. They're not costing you games. When you see players who don't play well and then disappear and just stop working off the ball, that's a problem. And you can't have that. Shonda consistently works his ass off.
Yeah.
And I give him so much credit, because it's so easy to get in your head when it's not your day on the ball. And I haven't seen that from him. The RSL game, he creates the tying goal. He won the ball back multiple times on Sunday where he did not play well Sunday. But the off the ball part of it, he did do a good job. And I respect the hell out of that. And I hope that when we get past emotions, we realize that these guys they're human beings, they're professionals, and they give everything to do this. And especially the guys like that who, when it's easy to shut down, don't. I I have so much respect for that, and I want it to click for him.
Yeah.
But it hasn't this year. It hasn't enough. So that opens the door, as Garth Lagerwey's told us on pregame shows multiple times over the last month. Adding a second designated player is their goal in this window, but he has not said that it will only be a number 9. He has never said that to us. And I mean, go back and listen when they're all posted. Go back and check them out. He has said attacking player. He said attacking player consistently, and he's mentioned winger specifically. So, I mean, it is possible that you go and you have Moranchuk coming in and you go get a winger and you roll with the 9s that you have that have been producing. And then you look at that position in January. And just, I try to reiterate this, just because if there's people listening who haven't heard that layout, you'd have 2 designated player spots right now. One of them will be Moranchuk. You want to add the second. That's been consistent. I think everybody's said that since Almada and Yakimakis were transferred out. Because of the rule change with the up to $3 million in allocation money for Caleb Wiley, you will be able to buy down Bartosz Slisz and his acquisition cost next year. So Garth went into detail. I did not expect him to. He went into detail when I asked him a question about kind of how all that fit. What they did is they staggered the acquisition costs with Saba, with Gregerson, and with Slisz. And with Slisz, the acquisition cost got backloaded to next year. Gregerson was this year. You're not in a position to be able to make it all work this year. You will be in January. So you can open up another designated player spot, the third one, in January if you have the right player to use it on then, or you use it next summer. So which window you use it in is somewhat irrelevant. You will be able to buy down Slisz next year because he moves into the DP spot the way you've rotated. And remember, too, the other thing, the rules have changed in terms of the U22s and the 3 designated players, and it doesn't have to be I don't even remember what they're called anymore. Like not a overmax designated player.
Yeah.
I don't know, all the stupid rules.
You add in the young DPs and all that kind of stuff.
You had to have like a certain kind of DP to have 3 U20. You don't have to do any of that anymore, but you had to before. So like the way they had to when they signed these guys and staggered those acquisition costs was a big part of the U22 rule, which is now different. But you can also put more allocation money to these things, and you have that coming in with Caleb, because you don't get to make that $3 million in allocation money go into, it's not directly, but I always try to explain it as your salary cap. basically you expand your salary cap with those kind of moves. It's not exact, and I know people love to get exact and yell when you don't. You understand what I'm saying? Like, basically, with the Caleb Wiley deal, you've added $3 million in allocation money.
Yep.
You can use that however you want in your salary cap. So they can use that to buy down Sleesh, and they can't use money from the from the transfers out of Almada and Yakimakis because they were designated players, and you can't take designated player sales money and put any of that towards the cap, towards allocation money, which frankly is stupid in my
Yep.
opinion.
It's dumb.
It's a dumb line to draw. It's something that needs to change. There's a few different rules that I would like to see change. Like I do, and I'll give you all a spoiler. I'm going to catch up with Garth when the window's done to really talk about the rules and how they've changed and how they need to change and where he'd like to see them change. It's going to be the nerdiest roster conversation that we've ever had, but we're going to do that at some point later this month. Yeah, it's going to be ridiculous. I'm going to need like flowcharts and spreadsheets and all the different things. But all that factors into building this roster and what you can do right now. So you can wait on the 9 to get back to this right now. You can wait on the 9 if you feel like Rios and TRA are giving you what you need, if there's a winger that you want now. But you might be in the situation like the Falcons were in, where you look down the road and you don't like the quarterbacks coming in later classes and later windows, and you're like, ooh, if I want to get a 9 and I want to get one I like, I need to do it now. And if you have to do that now, you have to do that now. Because I think Rios and TRA have done a lot of good things for you, but I don't think they are guys that Rios maybe. I'm gonna leave a maybe there.
Yeah.
TRAs hasn't been able to stay healthy, but if you are a MLS Cup contender, can you do that with Daniel Rios as your 9? If you nail the other positions, maybe, but it's riskier. I think we've generally seen those top teams have that top goal scorer. And I think he's right under that. Is it enough to find it somewhere else? I don't know. That gets down to roster construction and where you save a little bit in one spot to build up another spot, which we'll see what happens.
We should have you and Garth talking about the cap, and then let's have Zlatan on a third screen, and you explain to him, and then let him explain why he doesn't think MLS is growing.
But here's the thing, like, and this is honestly what ticks me off when we get into this stuff. Zlatan has no idea why there's a cap. Zlatan has no idea why there are the rules that are there. I can tell you why the rules are there. You did not have enough people to invest in the league when it launched in 1994, when they wanted to launch it, because people were terrified of one team outspending everybody else, like the New York Cosmos did a decade before. Like, literally, you did not have enough investment. That's a fact. So you had to create a structure that would entice investment, that would be safe, that would be protected. And that's why the guardrails are there. Now, the league has outgrown a lot of that. I do think the league benefits from some of the aspects of the rules. You can't wipe all of it away. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think you're going to get enough buy-in from that. I don't know if it honestly makes the league better. But can you evolve to where the league is today, where you're not looking at clubs folding, you're not looking at a lack of people interested in investing in it, you're looking at an opportunity to grow in a big way? Take it. Be smart, be intelligent about it, because, I mean, we just saw Bordeaux, a very proud club, can't be a pro club anymore.
Yep.
We've seen it in England with quite a few different clubs. Yeah, I mean, that's real. You don't want to bring that here. We're finally to a point where, I mean, it feels like 1996 was forever ago, but it's really not in the grand scheme of things. 1996, you had to get the league off the ground, to get Major League Soccer started, you had to do a futures deal with Anschutz for Chicago to get him to kick in the extra $5 million to get to $50 million to launch the league with, when you originally needed $100 million to start the league. So you slashed it in half to begin with. You were still short, and you got Anschutz to throw an extra 5 in to have the option rights to launch in Chicago 2 years later. That's why you have all these spending limits, and it's real. It's somebody compared it a long, long time ago, or I connected the analogy at some point to your grandparents who went through the Depression, and they would save everything, and you never really understood it as a kid because you didn't go through that. So you were never to that point where you didn't think you'd have enough money to eat that day. They did. They went through that. So that's why they are the way that they are. Some of these OG owners went through those days where the league almost folded, where the league barely had enough money to get started. So I get it. There's more new owners coming in. Like, it is evolving and it is moving in the right direction. It needs to move faster. And that's the next step. But when people just say, and Zlatan and others do it, like, oh, this is stupid, there's no reason for it. There's actually a lot of reasons for it. And you need to know why it got there to know how to make it better now. And I think that's the important step. And Garth knows that. I mean, Garth was in the league in 1996. They didn't have training grounds in 1996. Teams were training in public parks. Like, you didn't have the stuff that you have now. So he's lived both sides of it, so he gets it. And I hope more around the league listen, because I think he has good ideas about how to push things forward from that roster and that league perspective.
That'll be really good to listen to. When
it's going to be super nerdy, so I apologize.
No, I mean, but it's almost, it's needed. It is needed, because I think, and let me hiatus real quick. Somebody asking, Josiah asking, does this open for questions? Drop questions. We will bombard Jason with questions momentarily.
Oh boy.
No, but yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. I think fans kind of end up coming up with stuff in their own head. I mean, we all do, not just fans.
I've said it a million times. Like, I tell all the other guys at 92.9 this, when you get into the off season and, what do we talk about with the Falcons? It's the draft, it's free agency, with the NBA, which I think has done a great job with their free agency window opening and making that an event. Trade deadlines. Like, we talk about all this stuff in every other sport because we can. The NBA salary cap is insanely confusing, but it's all out there.
Yeah.
So if you want to really get into it, you can. And there are people who have, and there's people who do a good job of making the super crazy confusing understandable for the rest of us. And you can get to the point where you're talking about the Hawks and, like, they can have this much money under the cap. They have this kind of roster spot. They have this mid-level exception, like whatever those things are. Like, you've got, okay, so they can't go sign LeBron, but they can go sign XYZ. All right, cool. We can have a conversation about which one's better. We get into how Atlanta United gets better in the offseason. I'm like, I don't know.
Hopes and
I don't
prayers.
know what to tell you. Yeah, I mean, and then it's, and this is just the worldwide nature of it. Like, well, what player should they go sign? I can give you a list of 200 guys that would fit. We're talking worldwide stuff. Like, it's not the same. That part can't get around. But in terms of knowing at least like the budget and the kind of roster spot you have and those things, the league would really benefit from that stuff being public and us being able to have those conversations.
Especially when, I always laugh every time, we're in a room or in some kind of press conference with Carlos Bocanegra, and something is mentioned about a designated player or buying down a designated player or whatever other thing. He just kind of has this look of like dejection, and he's like, it's just a roster construct. And the fact that, you have this roster construct, that its walls and its rules are almost like fluid and dotted at times, that you can kind of play it. And kudos to the teams that can play it, right? And they kind of figured out ways to make it work. But the fact that it's that way in the first place is just insanely frustrating as a fan, and as people who do a podcast and people who run a website, like it's so hard to report on. It's almost impossible.
It can definitely be better. Like the designated player idea took this league from 1.0 to 2.0 though. So like I get it. You know, you were able to add David Beckham. I mean, it was the Beckham rule for a long time, is what they called it. You had guys that were making more than the max salary before that, and you know, you had to keep it off the books. And I mean, the league had to justify these things, and you know, you had to convince everybody to okay, Jorge Campos as part of his deal, like demanding, I think a Lamborghini. All right, well, we got to get him a Lamborghini. So all right, let's do it.
Let's make it happen.
You know, like I think Landon, when he came back from Bayern Munich, like it was, we're going to have to spend more than the max salary in the league is to bring him back, but we should bring him back. Like that's a good thing. So let's do it. So then you started to codify those things into the rules with the designated player rule. And I'm okay with that because it gives you if you just had a hard cap, you just threw everything into a cap and said you can spend 30. You're not signing Lionel Messi.
Nope.
And that's a good thing. So I'm okay if that means you put everything into a cap. Again, like we're gonna have to have like 5 different things and vote on it and figure it out. But if you put everything into a cap except for 2 players, or if it's 3 or whatever, and you can go over and do whatever you want with them, I think there's benefits to that as this league continues to grow. And you want to have flexibility, but you also want us to be able to break things down and really in a normal window. Right now we know, like, and Garth said it, just to be clear, and I think this is important too. I was really glad he said it. I think this past week, they don't have the room to add somebody else other than a designated player. So they can go get a designated player. Like, could you sign a guy that's under that and or right under that next year you want to buy down and they're a designated player this year? I mean, yeah, but that's not what they're looking to do. They're looking for a big impact move. But they can't go get 3 guys. Like that's not happening. So you've got a designated player spot. And for that, we pretty much know how that works. You can spend whatever you want on salary, you can spend whatever you want on transfer, and you go get the player. And that's what they're trying to do right now.
Which is about
Jason, one more question.
What we got?
One more question for me, and then Tyler gets to the questions. Has there been any update about hiring a search firm for a new manager?
I haven't heard. I know we were getting yelled at one time in our pregame shows for not asking Garth every single week about the manager part. When I mean,
I figure I'd give you a little bit.
Yeah, at least give me a couple weeks. It's good. Like we were at that segment, like it's supposed to be like 7 minutes, and it never is because it always goes over. And then Abe and Garrett have to like cut another segment pretty much entirely because we've stolen all their time. So it's tight, and it has been lower on the list because of what Garth has said about, you know, that's not the first priority. The first priority is to improve the talent in the roster. And I think that's the right call. And I think in terms of what Garth said another time about people that they have talked to, because they have talked to people. I mean, he said they have. I don't know who they've talked to. I don't know what reporting is out there, if any. I haven't heard any names or any of that. But the people that Garth said they've talked to are more interested in coming in January where they get a full preseason, which is typical. You know, like it's different portion of the calendar in European leagues that start now. But yeah, you want a full preseason. You know, you don't want to come in and be judged on an incomplete team and trying to figure it out. Like sometimes that works out. Sometimes it doesn't. You want a full preseason. So that's one thing that he said, which I would assume means that the like hiring a search firm and figuring that out probably after the transfer window would be my assumption. And that's my guess. There hasn't been an update, and I don't know what it looks like, honestly, to begin with. I mean, when you're talking about search firms, I think a lot of times people think that the search firm is going to come up with names that you wouldn't have otherwise. It's not really it. Like, maybe there's somebody that they come with, but generally you kind of know who the people would be that you're interested in. The search firm can help with due diligence. It can help with a lot of those kinds of things that again, lets you get to making the decision on who the best soccer coach is. So I would assume you're not there yet, although they could have one that we just don't know about. But my guess is it would happen, I guess, September or late August after the window's done, because it sounds like everything is put right now to getting the second designated player in the door before the window closes.
And to add on to that, I mean, it kind of sounded like, and it may have been on Full Time Report, it may have been on one of y'all's segments. I think, I don't know where this came from, so I'm not trying to not give y'all credit if it was, but at some point
okay.
he said, you know, actually it may have been when Pineda was fired. Either way, he had mentioned that, you know, they expect essentially a waterfall of applicants, and in a lot of ways, a search firm is also there to help you organize the massive amounts of applications and all that you're going to get, because I mean, Atlanta is in it. Look, we can talk about like how bad the team has been playing recently, the form that they're in or whatever, but Atlanta's still a big name place to come coach.
There's
regardless
a lot of people who would want to coach this team.
Exactly. So there are a lot of folks that are going to be putting their names out there in the hat, and that hat's going to have to be pretty big. And Garth Lagerwey and whoever he has in his office right now are not going to be enough to handle that amount of paperwork.
Yeah, you don't need to. Like, it's kind of like the analytics side of clubs. And, you know, you think back to, I think Lucy Rushton talked about it a little bit in the early days, which again, very different situation now. But the analytics can help you kind of get down to, rather than I need a 9, I need to go look at 500 different players who have played the striker position in these leagues. The analytics can help you get that list down to 50, 60. Okay, then you can get your scouting department in. Then that gets down to 10, 15. Yep. Then you can get your sporting director and your manager, and you can sit down and say, do you have preferences here? Is there somebody who jumps out to you? That's how that goes. And manager say is far less than a lot of people think. That's why I think a lot of people who have said you got to hire the manager first. I think if you did that, you're not getting you need to get the players now, because this is the best time to get players. And if you are beholden to the manager, as we've seen it, name the club outside of Manchester City with Pep right now, who's been there for a long time. Liverpool, previous to Klopp leaving, he'd been there for a long time. How many other managers have been there for more than a couple of years? If the manager's picking the roster, when the manager's gone, your roster might be gone too. And that kind of sucks. Then you got to do all that again. So that's why it's not like that, because you need to get the players that fit the way that you want the team to play. And this is from the club tip-top level. And then the club hires a manager who will have the team playing in the way that the club wants the team to play. Barcelona is known for this. Now, Barca is actually a fascinating one to watch this year, because Hansi Flick is talking about doing some different things. And that's very difficult in Barcelona, where they get hung up on, if you don't have 50% possession, it's heresy. It's craziness.
You'll be
Tata
booed
Martino.
off the field.
Yeah, Tata Martino won a game and got booed. It's like, so we'll see. I mean, I think that's just where you are right now. Your best bet to get the best players, because you have the most options, is right now. And your best bet to get the best manager that you want, if that's not Rob Valentino, is for January or after the season, whatever that falls in to have the full preseason. So I think you have to take those rather than go get the manager, then wait till next summer to go get any players.
Yeah. And that's been one of those points of contention. It's the chicken and egg scenario. We've had that discussion 100 million times in the past 3 months, it seems like.
Yeah, I think you have to be real with the things that you can't control. There are more players available now than any other time of year. So this is your best time to go shopping. And as Garth said, you have more managers who would rather take the team at the start of preseason, or ahead of that, be in position at the start of preseason, than to take it now. So when those are two facts driving your timeline, I think you follow those, and you go and you do the best with those facts that you can.
So I want to hit on, we'll circle back to it in a minute, because obviously there was some rumor, and it very much ties into the discussion we were having a little bit ago about designated players and all that. We want to hit on that, but couple of questions from
Yeah.
the folks in the chat.
What we got?
We'll make this an easy one first
boy.
to start
Okay.
off. Omar's asking, whose kid is that back behind you?
It's nobody specifically. It was just an extra twos kit from last year that the twos. I actually really like what they've done with their kits after. God, when did it start? Last year, maybe the year before,
It was the
where
year
they
before.
stopped just doing the first team kit and they do a simplified version of it. So that was the simplified forest kit, which they now wear the light blue second kit. But it's not the same as the first team. So that's just it's a white jersey with the green trim, the dark green trim. And it was just an extra jersey that they had and gave it to me before the season because it was unusable at that point. So nothing fancy at all. It is literally a jersey that did not get used last year that didn't get a number put on it.
I know, because you have a pretty extensive, I don't know if you still have it kind of right off screen, but you have a pretty extensive collection, don't you?
Yeah, I went through a phase, like, especially there were a lot of different like jersey deals and things happening during the pandemic, and I went through
Tommy knows all
and
about
got
that.
some cool deals and stuff. Found some cool bootleggers that got me some knockoffs that are very cool. And then found a really cool like Argentine site that did, and I probably bought a couple too many. They did some very cool like kind of mystery box things. And what hooked me was they did special editions because every team in Argentina did special editions the weekend after Maradona passed away. So all of them had like, one of a kind kind of patches or stitch-ons or whatever, with however they honored Maradona. And Maradona is my all-time favorite, so I picked up a couple of those. I got like Nueva Chicago and Platense.
Oh, yeah, like some like random.
Yeah,
things.
because it was just like a mystery box, and I was
Yeah,
like, okay,
that's cool.
but it's from the Maradona mystery box.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, yeah, I'll do it. Like
That's
Platense, like white and brown. I mean, it's the weirdest looking color scheme, but yeah,
that's awesome. All right, and so this one's kind of from Bruno, and you don't necessarily have to name a player, but maybe a position, and we kind of hit on it earlier. Not trying to give you your answer, but there's one thing you could change from a player or position in Atlanta that could elevate that person's game or position to help Atlanta win more games as it stands right now on August 7th, not including Miranchuk coming in.
okay.
What would that be?
I think it's fair to include Moranchuk coming in because he is, like, we know he's rostered,
Yeah.
he's coming. So if you let's set it that nobody else is leaving, nobody else is coming in, you hold your extra DP spot for January, and it's Moranchuk and what you have. At that point, I would say that you will probably be playing a 4-3-3, and this is just my kind of connecting the dots, and I think what we've seen from Rob and his staff. Amador on the left. Center backs actually can rotate some. I think Williams and Gregerson is your best pair, but Abram has been really good, just really steady, quietly good. And Noah's going to push in for time too. So, okay, if you play 4, then it's 2 of your 4 center backs. And I think that leaves Ephra to getting more time with the 2s right now, which is fine. He needs to play. I'm okay with that. I think his mentality is good in that. So Lennon on the right. So that's your back 4. Personally, I think you're better with Salish and Fortune as your 2 central midfielders. I think Tristan has been really inconsistent this season and has had I just don't think he fits every time with everybody around him. And I think, although that could change with Moranchuk, and that's the other element here, is what we're thinking about some guys could look different when you have Alexi into the group, and it looks different because it will be different. But right now, I think Fortune and I think Salish are your holding midfielders behind Moranchuk. I think it's Saba on the right. I think it's Rios up top. And I do not know what it is on the left. I would, and I know we saw it earlier this year, and it didn't work at that point, and then I think there was an injury. I would like to see Tyler Wolff be given an opportunity with a couple of games. You only have 9. I mean, that's the bad thing here is you can't really try too much or test too much because you gotta find something that fits. The things I talked about with Shonday in terms of what he gives you when he's not playing well, I think Tyler's even better in those moments. I think Tyler might be better of a pure goal scorer than Silva. He's nowhere near as electric, nowhere near as effective in 1v1s. But it might fit better, especially with Moranchuk pulling the strings as your 10. So that's my gut feeling. You want the more wild card situation, go to 5 in the back, 3 center backs, and that gets you Cobb back into the starting lineup. Lennon and Amador as your wing backs, same 3, Fortune, Sleesh, and Moranchuk. And you play Rios and Saba up top. And Saba is very free. He can drift wide. He can drop back. He can make it times 5-2-2-1. He can make it a 5-2-1-2. Like Saba's in a very free role. If you can't get what you want out of the left side, you just don't worry about the left side. You solidify your center back position with 3, and you have Amador and Lennon really go a lot. And Saba's then in a kind of a joker wild card role, and you see if that makes you better. I don't know which one is what you settle on. I'd like to be 4-3-3. I think it gives you more balance, but you just haven't been able to solve the left wing issue all year. And the more and more that I've thought about it and we've talked about it, I really think that might be what you need to solve in the window more. I think that might be the most pressing issue to make this team better.
So let's dive into that, and then we'll hit on a couple other things. I think going into this summer transfer window, especially with Yakimakis going out, Almada going out, you knew the team was going to go look for a number 10 because they need it to operate. And I think maybe Daniel Rios, mostly Rios, has changed the conversation a little bit. And
he should
100%.
He should have. And I'll give Abe Gordon a ton of credit. Like he was reluctant to ask me. It was a couple of weeks ago. I can't remember which game it was after, but he was like, I don't know if I should even ask you this, but I'm going to go ahead. I'm like, say it, ask it. What is it? And he's like, has Rios's performances, has that changed your priorities? And I'm like, yeah, you might be right. And it's been better even since then. So it should. And I think if you've listened to Garth with us in pre-games, I think you've heard it. I think he's been pretty clear without like literally saying, I'm going to go sign this player in this position, because he can't do that. I think it has evolved more, and it's fully down to, and TRA's part of it. I just think he's been injured more often than not. You're getting production out of the 9. You're not getting production out of the left wing. I mean, it's just as simple as that right now.
And so I guess that kind of ties into my 2 cents on the whole conversation is you have this left wing spot that is in dire need of something, a spark, an effective spark, because Shonday Silva, he tries to do what he can.
He gives you what he can give you. He's just been so up and down, and he's had injuries this season too, but he's been so up and down, inconsistent.
Yeah. So, but a winger, left or right, and then your attacking midfielder, those are going to be, obviously goal scoring is absolutely a necessity, but they are also playmakers. They're also progression roles. Your striker is not a progression role necessarily. That's not to say they're not going to get assists. That's not to say they're not going to get involved in a play. But at the end of the day, a striker's job is to score goals and be fed the ball. Their job is not necessarily to feed other people. And Daniel Rios has kind of made a name for himself for taking, 1 or 2 opportunities in a game because he's not getting fed consistently, and he's put them away. And if you can get, Moranchuk is a guy that we know is going to be a feeder. We know he's going to be a playmaker. We know he's got a left foot that can score goals as well. But if you can get a guy on that left wing who gives you a little extra in terms of, I mean, you need the goals, but you need somebody who's going to be a threat and therefore have a front three that is a threat across the entire width of the pitch. Because right now it's easy to just kind of let Shonday or whoever, maybe you don't give them as much attention. You always have to be careful of his 1v1, but he's not, putting the ball in the back of the net. So
he's not winning enough of those 1v1s either.
Exactly.
And I think that's the bigger issue. He's just not creating enough danger from that side.
Yeah. So
not consistently anyway.
Yeah. So then you look at kind of where, the rumor came out today, Steven Bergwijn. Obviously, the report was 15 million.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of were like, nope, whatever. So, but more than it just being the name Steven Bergwijn, I think it maybe tells you a lot about what the priority is, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
So with that being said, if it's not Steven Bergwijn, and you don't have to come up with a name necessarily.
I'm not gonna. That's a waste of time because it can be somebody that we're not thinking of. We don't know super well. I mean, like I watch a lot. I don't watch every league. I'm not scouting for players in that way.
Really? You don't do this 24/7?
No. There's only so many leagues I can watch. There's only so many hours in the day. Even if I watched a game every hour, that'd be 12 games in a day. Yeah, and I got to sleep at some point.
At some point, only Monster can take you so far.
Yeah,
but the overall identity, does that fit? Do you think that solves not only, along with Miranchuk, does that solve a lot of the goal scoring issues, and also does having a consistent pairing along with Saba on the other side, trio of guys that can feed the ball to a guy like Daniel Rios, does that improve Daniel Rios's numbers even way beyond what he's at now?
It should do the latter, no question. I think Miranchuk does that immediately. I think you might be looking for somebody a little bit different on the left. I mean, I think Bergwijn fits what you might be looking for. He's goal dangerous. He is not as much of a like old school winger, like go to the end line, whip in crosses. I think when you look at how this team is constructed, although Amador has been a pleasant surprise in what he gives you going forward. We kind of knew he'd be solid defensively and weren't really expecting anything significant on the offensive side. And that's okay when you have somebody like Brooks Lennon on the right who can give you that. So if Amador stays home more, you tilt a little bit. Teams do this all the time. So if that's what happens, if Amador stays home more than Lennon, so you start to tilt that way a little bit anyway. Well, then your left winger is different than your right winger because you don't need every similar thing on both sides because your fullbacks are different and the way you're building up play and all those things are different. Like this stuff it's not a video game at this point, like when you start to think about how you want your team to play, like you're getting into this level of we build up with two behind three, our goalkeeper gets involved in our build up. That means the next phase is like this. That means the attacking phase is like this. And you have to think about all those different elements. Now, you want players who can adjust to changes, and you're going to need that. And I think that's a key. And Saba gives you a lot of that on one side, which is great. But because Saba is a 10 goal, 10 assist kind of guy, he can give you both. Miranchuk is more of a 5 and 15 kind of player. And I'm just throwing round numbers out just to give you an idea. Like he's more of a creator than a goal scorer. He's got some goals in him, and I think he'd be one of those guys that can have a 10 goal season occasionally, but you're looking at 15 assists is what you'd like to get out of him. That's a high number. If you've got a 10 and 10 on one side and you've got a 5 and 15 in the middle, and you've got Lennon who is capable of double-digit assists on the right side as well, your left wing, I don't know if you're looking for as much creation as you're looking for goal scoring. And I think that can then affect who you're looking at. You're looking for somebody who can take some of the load off of your 9, and right now that's Rios, and can find the back of the net more often. and that's a different kind of profile. So I think it's getting into that level of discussion. I think Bergwijn fits that profile. I think he can give you those things. Is he the guy they end up signing? I don't know. I mean, it sounds like you're gonna have to spend more money, and then you start to have to figure out, like, okay, where is the bar? Is it worth that? Or again, as we've talked about, do you wait for the wing until January? And is there a 9 that can be more impactful right now? It's going to have to be really impactful to give you more than Rios has given you, in my opinion, right now. So that's the dilemma, and that's the challenge at the moment. But I think with where kind of my head is, what they need, what I've seen, what would make this team better, in my opinion, I think a player like that would do that. I think he fits what seems to be lacking. So just depends on if you can get the numbers to work out for everybody involved. They want to be here, and you think they're the right person to be here. Because then you got to start thinking about, do they fit into the locker room? Are they the right kind of character that we want? Are they the right kind of person that we want? All those elements that are very, very important. Culture is a very, very important thing. It's not just something that coaches say and gets thrown around. Like, if winning can fix some issues, but if you're not winning every game, those issues pop up really quickly if you don't have the right combination of individuals and you don't have the right culture.
Yeah, and if you have a 9, right? I mean, you TRA and Rios are fine, but like for me at least, no decision should be made just for the season, because you're where you're at, right? I don't think this team's going to be making an MLS Cup run here, but the
Yeah,
goal
I agree
here
with
has
that.
always been this season is the future, right?
Yeah.
Long term here, and I guess that's just what this team
Go-
has done on occasion, has made those emergency, like, we got to fix the season quick, and sometimes they've given out some bad contracts doing that.
I think Garth has been clear in saying that's not what they're going to do.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. Two, like, I'm trying to think of somebody that would really fit that. Like, we can retrofit people into that, but who are you thinking?
Well, friend of the show and on our intro, Jurgen Damm.
Nah, that's different though. Like, that wasn't to fix the season because, and this is one very important thing, if you remember the reporting, and our pandemic stuff is crazy. The reporting was that there was a deal in place before the pandemic. Now, it didn't happen until later, but I remember that reporting when we went to Mexico for Champions League, and
Really?
then the world shut down. Yeah, because he was out of contract at that point, and I think I'm trying to remember, like, I I want to say, like, him and Tigres canceled their contract. I don't think he was out of contract at the start, so that was March. I think the signing actually happened in June, if I remember right.
Yeah.
Well, was Joseph already hurt?
Yeah, he was hurt, and I don't know if they'd already talked to Dom before that, but that's not a like for like though.
Right.
Like, I don't think that was a fix the season signing. I think it's more of a gamble, but like an educated gamble. I mean, you didn't spend that much on Jurgen Damm, like, in the grand scheme of things. And
We just signed him for 35 years.
yeah, I mean, it didn't, like, I think when you're talking about guys that, getting back more to how Garth has talked about wanting to get out of contracts, I don't think his was as big of an issue. Could you have maybe gotten him on shorter years? Potentially. Yeah. He's couldn't stay healthy. And that's ultimately what ends up hurting you, is he can't stay fit, and you never get to really see it. I mean, I'll remember calling the game from the studio at 92.9 in early 21, where they had to fly to New England day of because of the rules at that point, and then be on a bus for an hour and then go play at Gillette. And I think Barco and Dom both had muscle injuries, which isn't really a surprise because that's not how you want to do things. And especially when
Barco muscle injuries. Oh,
Yeah.
If I did a shot for every game that he was out with a muscle injury, I'd be in trouble.
Yeah. It's a shame. He'll always be one of my favorite players that I had the chance to see, because when he was on, he had some just incredible performances.
Post-Olympic Barco was something special.
Post-Olympic Barco, but the really sneaky one is pre-U20 World Cup Barco.
Yep.
2019, he obliterated Kansas City in a game on the road. He had one of the best goals that I've seen with Atlanta United in New England. It's because of the angle. We were like diagonally behind him and behind the goal onto our left, and he hit that curler into the far side. It was amazing. I mean, he doesn't fit into the conversation we're having either, because he was like a for the future kind of signing.
Yeah.
And it's one of those that I get it. Again, we can play, revisionist history all day with signings, but I think the line that gets thrown around is like every signing other than Joseph and Almiron have been busts. Barco is not purely a bust, especially when you pretty much recouped everything you spent. I think salary put to the side, which that's an unfair expectation in my opinion. You got most of what you got back. Injuries, you didn't quite get everything that you wanted to, and going back to culture and some of that, maybe that was a little bit of an issue as well when it comes to Barco. Pitti you had for a year and a half. He was cooked for 6 months of it after everything that happened in 18 with River and the Libertadores final and having to go to Europe to play it, and then going to the Club World Cup, and then showing up and like just dead tired mentally. But the second half of 19, he was one of the best players in the league. Again, going back to culture, maybe the mix with him and Frank was not good and too prickly. But in terms of performance, and the last home game he had, the Nashville game, good grief, that game. In an empty Mercedes-Benz Stadium, which is one of the eeriest things, but God, he was good that day. You had guys who didn't surpass high expectations. You didn't have any of those signings, and Dom's in a different class because again, you didn't really spend a ton, but none of those were. The one I always think of is Danielson with FC Dallas back in the day, where the only highlight he had was juggling the ball on the touchline in the middle of a game one time, when he probably should have been, I don't know, going to goal. Like, that's it. I mean, you can go back in the older days, and there's some just baffling signings that absolutely just bricked completely. You had guys that had big expectations and came in underneath them. Even Araujo. I mean, he did not live up to it. I thought that's who you were going to say, Tommy, because if you want to go to one that felt more of reactionary, and I think that was an educated gamble at that time on that player for what that team needed, but also not just like a short-term fix either. And he didn't get to where a lot of people thought he would. He didn't get there consistently enough. Another one, kind of like Shande, like I'd never say that Araujo didn't fight for you, didn't give you, the effort that you require. He wasn't good enough in the moments that you needed him to be better. He wasn't quite good enough. That's the one that maybe feels the most like a man. I need somebody to hit a heater here and really be good coming in and out of the gate. And he was pretty good in the second half of 21.
He was pretty good.
He was pretty good.
He stumbled after that gate.
Yeah, and I hate it for some of these guys because I think if you got to see Luis a little bit and you pay attention to his social media and kind of you don't get to know him that way, but if you're paying attention to kind of who they are as people. Luis was one that I think you'd be pulling for. He I think really wanted to play better. I think he really wanted to be the man.
Did I freeze?
Nope. Hang on, Jason. I think you might have froze.
when he comes back, Moreno. A lot of people brought that up in the chat. Marcelino Moreno. That was a real bad season. That was a real bad season.
I mean, but that was COVID.
I understand that, but that was a real bad season. Didn't we have the interim manager at that time too?
Yeah, we had Stephen Glass at the time.
Right. So we had no long-term manager, and we bring in. Maybe he's coming back.
Wait, possibly.
Oh, I can't believe we're talking about Moreno and Araujo and Jurgen Damm. It was my fault. My fault. I brought Jurgen Damm up. That's my fault. So I will take the. I'll take the hit on that one.
You got to put some money in the jar.
I've got it.
Where's it at?
But I don't know.
Because there ought to be like $150 in that thing at this point.
No, not me. No.
Oh. Let's see. I don't
Well, we'll see if he comes.
Jason here. We'll see. Josiah, I see your comment. I'm going to try to hit on that, and then something else. As soon as Jason makes it back, he's said everything froze on his end. So as long as y'all can still hear us and see us,
Yeah, I think people hear us.
Let me see if I can assist Jason with some technical support real quick. Hang on.
Okay. Well, great. Well, yeah, Marcelino Moreno I think is a good example of one though, because yeah, I mean you didn't really need him at the point of that season, right? You didn't know where you were going with the manager at that point. Just a thought.
Yeah. And it seems like it's one of those though where it was like it's kind of been up and down.
Yeah.
Like since then, right? It's been a wave. It's been, you get the right players, maybe that culture, the coach that Jason was talking about. Which speaking of, I think maybe we have resolved the issue possibly.
Lost, maybe.
There we
You're
go.
back.
We're back.
Yay.
We're back.
We start talking about Marcelino Moreno.
I heard that as I was fading into oblivion in the background. Yeah, that one's kind of like that too. I heard Tyler say that was, COVID was a factor there too, and it maybe. I think I'm trying to think in 20. So, God, 20 feels so weird to think back to.
Yes, it does.
I know the windows were different because of everything. They were later. I know he came in the summer.
Numerically, he actually ended up being one of the best players in the league that when he came in.
Yeah, like Marcelino is not a designated player level talent in this league. And I don't think he was necessarily acquired with like big money. I want to say he was in that like 4 to 5 range in terms of transfer. And salary was edges of DP kind of level. So I think when you took it over the long period of a contract, like could you have maybe structured things a little bit differently to make his hit less and then maybe change the expectation? Yeah. That one, along with Araujo, feel more along the line of what you don't want now in terms of just signing somebody for 9 games. And I don't even think they were necessarily that because they were younger guys. Like, they weren't like short-term contracts. Like neither one was that. I think you wanted to get them in because they'd make the team better, but you expected them to be pieces for a while too. And Moreno kind of was. Araujo, I think if you look at anybody who was the bigger outlay with bigger expectations that ended up being the furthest away from that in terms of production, he's probably the one.
Yeah.
It's not from a lack of effort. It just didn't happen for him.
It just didn't work out.
Right.
And I'm glad that I think he's done pretty well in Brazil since going back. And again, you got 8 figures for him. Like that's the element when you get into it. And it's not that makes it better. You'd rather have the wins than the 8 figures, but you're getting out of deals that are supposedly like catastrophically horrible and bad and setting the club back. Like Pitti, you made money.
Which
I think
so wild.
That was a Hail Mary. That was a Hail Mary there.
Hey, it worked out. And that's kind of the opposite and maybe that's what prompted you. Okay, Marcelino, it's funny. I actually remember when not scouting, but when I was watching the Argentine league, like really every week and looking at guys, because we were signing everybody out of Argentina at that point. His name was on a list at the beginning of 2020 that I did. So like I had seen him. I'm like, he would fit. And then when they started talking about him, I'm like, man, I know him. How do I know his game? Oh, I was already saying he would fit. Wow, that's crazy. But that happened after you sold Pitty. So he's not like for like. He was more of an 8, but so was Almiron, who turned into a 10. So I mean, I kind of get what you're trying to get to with that. Similarities, but Pitty is such a unique player. It's kind of like, honestly, before Thiago, Pitty might have been the most talented player that we ever had. Like pure soccer talent, like technique might be there.
Yeah.
Almiron more impactful because of the pace. I mean, just Almiron could flip a game on its head. Joseph, goal scoring, forget it. Different conversation. Defensively, you can get into guys who could kind of dominate games at times. But in terms of just sheer talent with the ball, man, Pitty might have been that guy. Barco was really close to that too. But Thiago surpassed everybody. He's maybe in the grand scheme of things, Thiago Almada might be the most talented player that Atlanta United ever fields.
Yep. For a very long time.
Yeah, and that's okay. Like, I mean, Argentinos Juniors never had anybody better than Maradona. Like, I mean, it happens. Like, you have that guy that at some point you always want to get the next guy, but sometimes you don't always realize that you had that guy and he was that good. Now, Marcelino was a player that I always loved, so I would have loved to have seen him here for a long period of time. And I think he could have been like a good supporting cast member, but he was never, like, personality wise, ability wise, he was never like the guy.
Yeah, y'all know my feelings about Marcelino. I would take Marcelino back in the
clutch too.
Clutch gene all day.
Yeah, he had the clutch gene for sure. And he owned DC United too. I love that.
I still remember the DC game. I was actually in the supporter section for that one, where he ate like 9 people alive and then played that ball to George Bello for the tap in. And that was a happy day to see that. That was amazing.
Was that 21?
That was 21.
Where he scored late to put it away?
Yep.
Yeah.
That was the one up in DC where he scored late.
Yeah, I was thinking that one. Are you thinking the one at home?
Oh, yeah, no, the one for sure. As far as the clutch thing, that one in DC where he scored the header at like the very end, like in the 90s.
Back-to-back games at Audi Field. He had like either to seal it or the winner. Like he had the header, and it was an ugly game. Mike did TV that game. It was me and Jeff Lorenowitz in the worst booth in the league at Audi Field. the Jeff's face when we walked in there, he's like, how are we supposed to call a game from here? And the goal happens on the other end of the field. Like, we are on the end line in this like plexiglass hut at Audi Field. And we're supposed to see what happens on the other end of the field, 120 yards away, through plexiglass and like ducking down to not have the roof of the press box like block us. I had no idea who scored it. That was one of those that I'm really glad I do the goal call the way that I do it, because it buys me time to figure out who it was. We didn't have a monitor either. So it's like, I'm calling the goal. I'm talking about everything I can talk about without saying who scored it, because I have no idea who scored it. I look at Jeff. He's like, I don't know who scored it. And finally, like, I saw Moreno peel away from the group and like hold his shirt up. I think he had a message on his shirt.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh, it was Moreno. Okay,
yep.
I'm going to go out on a limb here.
Yep, I remember. No, and the other one was the one that was at home, the DC one.
Yeah.
With George
DC
Bello.
United. I forgot about the home time he destroyed DC.
Yeah, that was that's one of those like they did with Gio Reyna against Mexico a couple of years ago, where they put the music to him and you could just watch it. And he just skates through people. I loved that. I loved being able to see that live. So anyway, let's see really quick. Get you out of here. Josiah had a question. Slish has been playing higher up the pitch for a few games now.
Yeah, by
What
necessity.
do you think?
It's actually been okay. It's actually it surprised me. I did not expect it. But when you have three central midfielders playing, and that's kind of what you had to work with, and getting, I think, the best group on the field, because the other option would have been, and again going back to Atlanta United too, like, could you have played Nick Firmino as a 10 and two holding midfielders behind? Yeah, but he's not a Thiago Almada kind of 10. He's not a playmaking 10. He's more of a second forward 10. Um, Firmino's always felt like Clint Dempsey to me in terms of a guy without a position. Like, he's not purely a 10. He's not purely a 9. He can play both. He can play on the wing, but he's not really going to be a pure winger. He can play as an 8, which we've seen. The Open Cup game in Charleston was a pretty clutch performance out of him when you needed it. But he doesn't really fit in any of those positions. He's just an impact player. You would have had to, and I think in the time frame that you had, where you literally were not having training sessions because of the amount of games that you were playing in a short period of time, it's really hard to make the team fit with him there. So you went with three central midfielders, which gives you more solidity, and one of them's got to kind of step out and do something in the attack. Slish ended up being that guy. I didn't expect it, but I think it was okay. I think ultimately it's him with someone behind Moranchuk, and that's what will get the best out of him. But it's good to see that, okay, he can be more of an 8 than a pure 6. And he can give you some things in the attacking half and the attacking third. And it's good to have.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so let's see. I know we're kind of fast-paced jumping around.
No, it's all good.
Gray has been dying to know which college players you're kind of keeping an eye on and which ones you think might be competing in preseason.
Atlanta United related or just in general?
Yeah, Atlanta.
I really want to see Justin McLean at Georgia State. It sounds like he had a really good summer. He was up with, I think, Long Island, if I remember right. So I didn't get to see him, but it sounded like he was performing at a pretty good level. He took a big step last year, I thought, with Georgia State. So he's one that I want to see more of and see if he can go from being a good second guy on a team to being the man. Simon Carlson ended up being the man with Georgia State last year a lot. He finished his time there. He graduated, and because I think this is the last year that guys have COVID years, if you were there in 20. So I guess the freshmen in 20 still have one more year that you can take COVID year. So you're seeing like what Simon did. A lot of guys, like, they play 4 years somewhere, and it's kind of like, well, I got one more year, and somebody's going to give me a scholarship or give me NIL money or whatever. Like, I'll go somewhere else and play. And West Virginia picked him up, one of the top teams in the country, which is very cool for Simon. He's a guy, honestly, too. Like, I don't think he's an Atlanta United MLS level talent. He was always just to the edge of the Atlanta United Academy. I think he was predominantly SSA, but played around all those guys. He's right there. Maybe just a little undersized, but really close. Let's see. I'm trying to think of other guys. Grant Howard is one that, if I'm not mistaken, he has now gone to Virginia. I'm getting caught up on the local schools, so the guys who are further afield, I need to make sure I know where they're at, because there's so many transfers now at this point. The portal's crazy. But Howard is one of those, like, really late bloomers that he played with the U19s in UPSL. That was the first place I saw him, part of the fullback university at the Atlanta United Academy, and was always off to the side, never a guy that they thought would be a pro guy. He had such a good early, was it 22? I think it was last year in USL. He had such a good early portion of the calendar year with the U19s. He came into the twos, started getting games, started getting a lot of games and a lot of minutes, and then went to college. So he's one of those that he's big, he's strong, fullback, but he's got a motor. Different kind of profile than another one, Remy Okunlola, who was another guy in the situation who was kind of like a late twos addition, took advantage of opportunities and to the point that I don't think Steve Cook wanted him to go to Clemson. It worked out pretty well because he went and he won a national title at Clemson. But Howard's a different player profile. Like, he's bigger and stronger. He could maybe be more along the Edwards type, where he can play fullback, he can play wingback, he could play as a third center back as well. I don't think he doesn't have the same height. I think that might be the issue with him playing as a center back. But he was a fascinating prospect to me. Okunlola is definitely a prospect because of what he did with the twos last season in the spring before going. Those are the ones that come to mind straight off the bat. But Georgia State will be an interesting team. They added a player from Duke that I want to see how they fit in, Miguel Ramirez, a local player who went to Duke, wasn't getting a ton of time there. He's come back to Georgia State. Without seeing them yet, I'm kind of wondering if he replaces Carlson and how that team functions. Evan Schroeder's another former Atlanta United guy who left Georgia State. He was kind of the odd one out. When they played three center backs, he would be the third. And I think he really was different and suited it. But when they went to a line of four, he wasn't getting as much playing time. So he's gone to Virginia Tech. He is a ball-playing center back that I would like to see how he progresses. Athleticism is the question, and it happens sometimes with these kind of guys where as you're trying to get to that next level, if you're not quite fast enough, you're not quite strong enough, it shows. And I wonder about that for him. But on the ball, he's very good, and as a defender, he's very good. He's very good in the air as well. So he's one that maybe a change of scenery will do him good. I'll be tracking him. But Georgia State, I'll do most of their games this season. A fun team to watch. Oglethorpe in D3 is another team that I do a lot of their games. At the D3 level, if you're in town and you're looking for games to go see, their men are outstanding. And the way that they play, outstanding. Couple of older players in that group. Ben Alram was an All-American last year at D3. He's an interesting prospect. Again, older, didn't make it through the French academies, ended up coming to the States, didn't really, I mean, he came here to play soccer. I've had the conversation with him, like, wasn't really interested in being a student at first. And it really was difficult for him. Kind of found his footing at Oglethorpe, and he had a monster year last year. J.R. Cozine is another local guy who has never quite made it big. He's got all the ability in the world to do that. That'll be a team to go see. And it's small. You're right on top of the field. It's very cool. Georgia State's the same way. Georgia State's women is the other team that I really always push for people to go watch. That is a top team in the way that they play. Very possession-based, very different from a lot of women's college teams. Not about directness. They can do some of that. Not about just speed and power, although they have some of that. They've got some really good soccer players, and it's a team that is like right there that can break out. The men are kind of the same way too. Like, the men played West Virginia, who I think was number one at the time, really tough. I think they finished 4-3. Played Central Florida, who was number one at the time, really tough late in the season. I think it was a 2-1. Like, really close. Georgia State's women are really close in the Sun Belt as well. Could be a breakthrough year for both of them. And Clayton State's the other one at D2 down in Morrow. They're ranked number 16 in the country. They've got some guys. Yeah, that's another team to go watch. They play good soccer. They had Gio Rios last year. He's moved on. I think he's playing in Niza this season. But Alexis Ituria is a winger who did spend some time in Atlanta's academy. Little bit of a late bloomer again. I thought last year he really came into his own. He is a pro prospect. I don't think he's an MLS first team pro prospect right now, and the age is going to hurt him a little bit. But could he go into the twos and be an impactful guy straight away? Yeah, he could. Could he go into MLS Next Pro and be an impactful player? He absolutely could. The D2 and the D3 and the NAIAs are always fascinating for kind of the late bloomers, the guys who change position, kind of find the right amount of playing time and just blossom. So there's talent everywhere, and there's good teams at all the different levels, just locally. When Atlanta United is not playing, like, go see these college teams play. And you're going to enjoy Clayton State. You're going to enjoy Oglethorpe, both on the men's side, smaller schools. You're going to enjoy Georgia State because it's just a really cool place to go see a game in the middle of downtown as well. Skyline right behind it, MARTA train going back and forth. You're right on top of the field, and they're both entertaining teams to watch. So a lot of good college soccer going on, and a lot of Atlanta United guys that, could be that next one that comes back and signs a deal. Okunlola is probably the one that would be the most interesting right now, who was the closest, went to school, did really well. He'd be a backup right back right now, which you could potentially need next season.
Yeah.
So he would be one to watch, to see what he does in college, to see if he can go from being an impactful freshman to being a stud as a sophomore. Can he raise his game another level? And if he can, might be time to go talk to him.
Sweet. That
Awesome.
is perfect timing. That was so one of the things, Gray, he covers a lot of our academy stuff, Gray.
Yeah.
Um,
Does awesome work. Absolutely awesome work.
And he kind of does like a once a quarter or so, kind of breaks it down similar to that. And so I'm sure you've probably given him some ideas as well.
These are things that he knows.
But
I'm not saying anything that he doesn't know.
But it is good. It's also good for, everybody else. Like, there are plenty of other soccer teams and talent out here to go watch, and it's fun sometimes.
Yeah.
It's also fun, especially in a time like now. You get 3 weeks with Atlanta.
I mean, Saturday night tomorrow, Georgia State is at Clayton State, preseason friendly. Last year they tied in Atlanta. That really ticked Georgia State off.
Yep.
They rotated a lot. Clayton State, as the D2 school in that, they went for it and played their main guys a lot. That could be a really fun one Saturday night down in Morrow. And then Georgia State's women are at home Saturday afternoon, and then Georgia State's men are back at home next Tuesday. So fun stuff. I think Tyler froze this time.
Possible. Oh, okay.
It might just be my computer doing it again, but I think you're hearing me.
No, you're good. Carry on. Carry on. 1 second.
Yeah, he disappeared. Real quick, Jason, as we close everything up here, the thing that I've been trying to say nonstop on our spaces is that it seems like this roster is going to be able to have a huge overhaul at the end of this year because of contracts, U22s, obviously DPs changing around. Is it safe to say this is the biggest offseason of Atlanta United's since it's been formed?
Yeah, because I think maybe not as much. I do wonder what the level of overhaul is. The top end is going to be completely different than it was walking in the door this season. I mean, we know that. And it's already started with Moranchuk coming in. I mean, I don't want to tie it like just one window, just in case, because I think it is probably the start of this season where there were big expectations to maybe next summer what the team looks like. It's got to be better. And you've got to take advantage of the rule changes to create a new designated player spot. Potentially U22s, although, Garth said that they're not looking in terms of the U22s to be like those main guys. Like, and I don't think they should, not with the amount of money that they can spend. Like some teams, you've got to go and get like your U22's got to hit because you don't really have the big designated players. Atlanta's going to have big designated players. So it's those guys hitting. The U22s are more support or more development. And he said this, and it was actually interesting. U22s, and I don't think a lot of teams have done this, but some have, where like Caleb Wiley, for example, if there's not a good deal for him, it's time to do a new contract for him. You want to, again, maintain like contract control. I know it comes up in other sports with salary caps. You want that also to be able to sell him. If you don't find the deal, he wants to stay, everybody's happy, but it's time for a new contract, you could sign him to a U22 deal. He could fit into that. That's another tool for it. So that could end up like Jay Fortune could end up being a guy who maybe slides into that, where it really helps you cap wise, but you can
Right.
also reward him and keep him around. And if he continues to develop, maybe he gets sold for money that then goes back into your cap, which look is part of it. So big picture, you've got a new number 10. You're going to have a new number 9 at some point. You're going to have another impactful designated player. So straight away, that makes it gigantic because you need to hit on those deals. Even if you semi hit on one and hit on the other two, that can work. You don't need a bust in there. And going back to what we talked about, you haven't had many just pure total wastes of space of guys that you've went and got. I know it's easy to retro that, but it's just that's not how it went down. So and a new manager or empowering Rob to be the manager. So there's a lot. That's a lot of stuff. I don't, you look at what's the roster right now. Goalkeeper is going to be a question just because of Brad's age, although he hasn't played like his age this season.
Nope.
Left back, you have Amador. Is he a starter? Is he that guy? You've got some time to figure that out, or you'll have space to figure that kind of positioning out. Center back, you got a lot of options, and you've got two really young ones in Cobb and Morales. I think Cobb could start 34 games next year, and I wouldn't be afraid of it at all. Williams is a little bit older. Abram, I don't know if he's out of contract at the end of the year. Maybe.
I think he is, but has an option. If I'm
probably
not
an option that would make sense. Just the amount of time, and you never know on the options. It's never purely like I like him, so keep him, because that option could trigger a giant raise, for example, which changes your paradigm. Right back, I'd have no problems with Brooks, even if he's not what he was last year. He's still 7 assists, 8 assists. That's pretty good.
Yeah,
I think 7.
7, I think. Yeah,
it's pretty good out of your right back. I think when everything starts to fit better, he'll be even more impactful. Central mid, we talked about it. You got 4 guys right now. Dax's age, you wonder if he's going to be back for another run. Fortune is growing into the role. Sleesh, Muyamba, I think Sleesh is one to build around. Tristan would be a question. Is it better to have the young up and comer in Fortune playing with Sleesh and then having a veteran like a Dax? Or is Muyamba the guy, and then you got to figure out what you want to do with Fortune in the long run, because he's kind of at that point, like he needs to play more if he's going to play more for you.
Yep.
Saba, you're good. 10, you're good with Moranchuk. Striker, I think you're good with backups, although you got to probably make a decision on Rios if you want to keep him long term. And if then he would be happy being the number 2 to whoever you bring in, which he might not be. And I couldn't really argue with him at that point. And then the left wing we've talked about a ton. So that's a lot. Ronald Hernandez, I know, is out of contract at the end of the year. There's an option with Edwards coming into the mix. You're probably covered with the utility defender. We talked about a lot of center backs. I think you're going to have probably an option or question on Tyler Wolf. Mosquera, maybe.
He was 4 years.
Okay.
So I think he's got two more.
Okay. That's fine. I like him off the bench. I like what he can give you off the bench. So, okay. Brennan's new. You've got new guys coming into the mix like Gordon, but you're not expecting things from him next year. Aiden Torres, you're not expecting things from him next year. Those are guys for the future. Hibbert maybe enters the equation at goalkeeper because he's on a first team deal next year. And he's made some pretty big jumps pretty quickly.
Yes, he has.
I've been really impressed. And not even just with the saves, like just the mentality and maturity and leadership. Like I'm really liking what I'm seeing from Jaden Hibbert. That could end up being a very shrewd pick in the draft and getting him in early rather than going back to school. So it's not like a ton of guys like outgoing and incoming. It's that. It's not like 15 changes. It's 4 or 5. I mean, even if you get past the designated players, big changes from the start of 24. And anytime you're in that situation, you got to nail it. You have to nail it because You can have a good supporting cast. If you don't have the headliner, your ceiling is lower.
Yep.
If you have the headliner, your ceiling instantly changes. And that headliner doesn't have to be Lionel Messi. Look at Columbus. Their headliner is Cucho Hernandez, who did not make it in the Premier League, who is an outstanding player and was not in the right situation there. Came here, he's in the right situation. Diego Rossi, I remember everybody saying they're not going to be able to do it without Lucas Zelarayan.
Yep.
Rossi came in, fit like a glove. It doesn't have to be that. It can be. I mean, if LAFC goes and gets Antoine Griezmann and adds it to what they have, we're going to talk about them as a contender for sure. We have to.
Don't tell Henry. He's a little salty.
But are they a contender? Like, we have to see it first.
Yep.
It might not actually work. So there's no guarantees with any of it. But more often than not, and I think in clubs like Atlanta's situation where you're going to spend on these guys, this top end talent, you got to hit. You got to hit on the majority of it. And that's what you're down to. So in terms of it being the most important offseason, I think you're dead on. I think you are, because of all of those spots that are going to be open from what this team looked like walking in the door in 24. After a good finish to 23, taking Columbus to the limit in the postseason, being just a step below it, they were the best team in the league. It's one of the best runs we've ever seen in the league, what Columbus has done since the beginning of last year. And 24 has not been what it was supposed to be at the beginning. So you got to hit that reset button hard and get it right, because now there's mounting pressure. Now there's frustration. Now there's a different feel to all of it than there was even at the beginning of 24.
100%.
So it's a lot of pressure. It's going to be tough, but this is why people get paid the big bucks. This is what we love about sports. I mean, it's we get to sit here and talk about, can you do this? Can this fit? Can you squeeze this piece in? Can you make these things work? Like, this is why we play college football and do all the recruiting. This is why we play FIFA. This is why we do all this stuff, right? So this is it is fun about it. It is fun to get into this. It's fun to have this expectation of, man, what can Moranchuk be for this team? You know, can he make these other guys better? What if you get Steven Bergwijn? Like, ooh, what does that look like? Like, that gets you excited walking in the door. It should. I hope.
Yeah, I mean, and it's something for the fans to hold on to, right? In a time where it's not great right now.
No, but that's sports. I mean, we're never guaranteed anything. Like, you know, like, how many years were the Yankees spending crazy money and not winning a damn thing? Like the Cowboys.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it's sports. Like, you can have the best team on paper walking in the door and it just doesn't work. You can have a team that nobody expects and they find a way to make it work. You can win in different ways. Like, that's what we love about it. And I get frustration. Trust me. I know. I'm a Georgia football fan. We went through it for a long time.
I don't want to hear it anymore. You can't talk about the old times.
Hold up a second. Hold up a second, because I'm saying it in this context, because I'll get to where you'll be happy with what I'll say. Like, I heard 1980 for so long from people who had no business talking about it, but it was always the thing that people would say. And it's funny how it all changed really quick when you went back to back. But I get so frustrated with any Georgia fan who gets bent out of shape about anything right now. I'm good. Like, of course I want them to be good. Of course I want them to win. This past year, like, in any normal year, when you lose one game by 3 points?
Yep.
And you're the defending back-to-back champions, any other season, you're back in the playoff.
Yep.
Any other season. This time you had 6 teams that deserved 4 spots. I get it. Was I sad about it? Yeah, I would like to have seen them in the playoffs, see if they could have defended their title. I wasn't breaking anything about it. I'm good, man. They've done things that I wanted to see them do for so long, and they got close a lot. And you know, like, I'm not saying this in a negative sense, but Frank DeBoer wasn't wrong when he said what he said, and he was not.
Oh boy.
No, he wasn't saying it to be insulting, and it's not insulting. It's when you have the success that Atlanta United had straight out of the gate, the expectation is it lasts forever. It never does in sports. It can't. That's the nature of it. Like, the Yankees went through bad times. Every team goes through bad times. Manchester United, I mean,
Yep.
it happens to everybody. Sometimes it happens a lot back and forth. Sometimes you have sustained success for a long period of time, and then it drops off, and then you have to find a way to do it again. Like, it's just the nature of it. So, like, we were all spoiled by the success early on. Not that we are spoiled and bad people. We were spoiled by the success because it was so new and so quick, and it felt easy. It's not easy. It wasn't easy then to put that group together. It wasn't easy to make it all work. And it's not easy now. It wasn't easy in 19 where you were that close to going back to MLS Cup and potentially going back to back. None of it's easy. And it's not easy right now. But I think we can't let that success at the beginning cloud it to where it is supposed to be easy, because it never is, especially in this league.
Yeah.
Look at the history of teams that have up and down, up and down, up and down. It's hard. This is
Dynasty
a big,
not easy to build in MLS.
no, it's not. But going back to kind of how we were ending this, it is a massive time for the club's short-term future. I think the long-term future, it's easy to forget it right now, but man, when you see what the academy is producing, you see the level of the player that is coming into the second team, you see the level of the player that is in getting that first team opportunity. You see the growth of the game in this area. You see all those things. The future is amazing. And that's one that I will always remind people that 10 years ago, the future that you were looking forward to was hopefully 5,000 people at a game in a place where, you don't have any of the amenities that you do now today. That wasn't what any of us, I mean, that was all we knew, but that wasn't what we wanted. This is incredible. I couldn't have dreamed it when I was a kid and fell in love with the game. I couldn't have dreamed it 10 years ago. I couldn't have dreamed it when Atlanta United was announced. I couldn't have dreamed it walking into 2017. I couldn't have dreamed any of what we're seeing now. And we take for granted. We all do. It's human nature. Like, at the end of 2013, the professional team in Atlanta, the Silverbacks, was supposed to be dead. 2014, they came back, they had local ownership, and then the local ownership didn't want to continue it anymore. And 2014, I was playing the music at Silverbacks Park, and I played every goodbye song at the end of that because it was supposed to be the last game ever.
Yep.
And then they came back from the dead again. They were Bernie and Weekend at Bernie's because the league needed them and paid to prop them up, literally. And in the end of 2015, it was kind of like, is this the end? I don't know. Is it? Maybe not. Who knows? And they didn't pull the plug until January 16. That was professional soccer's existence before Atlanta United. I went through it with the Ruckus, the first team I fell in love with.
Yep.
First year was great. And they got to the final and they lost to Seattle, and I'll hate the Seattle Sounders forever because of that. And then 1996, they went out of business and sold all their guys midseason. And then you didn't know when they were actually going to play games because games just got canceled because they didn't have any money. And they were playing at Adams Stadium on like brick bleachers. That was pro soccer when I was in my first years in college. Like, I get it. We want to see this team win and all these things, but the future, the stuff that you can control is great. It looks great. It's all heading in good directions. Things are going in good directions. The parts that you can't control, the sports part of it, man, we need to hit on some guys. Get some guys that fit. Get some guys that come in here and light the house on fire, and everything flips pretty quickly with wins. It always does. It always will. It's why we chase that high, because we all do it. So hopefully that's what's coming with this window and the January window, which I think are key. And if you get the right guys in, the team looks really, really different, even without a whole lot of different names on it, I think it looks really different because of impact, and that's what you need.
From your mouth to God's ears.
Fingers crossed, man. I wish it was that easy that we could just guarantee it. I wish that 5-star kid that I'm trying to recruit on EA College Football who becomes a stud, I wish that it was just guaranteed that he becomes a stud. That doesn't happen in real life. Sometimes things happen and out of everybody's control. So,
unfortunately.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully they don't go driving anywhere. That's a little Georgia joke there.
Yeah. I know. I know. It is messed up. But
guys, we passed the Deadpool runtime.
That's my fault. You guys know better than to have me on this show.
I know.
This is
I don't know
why
if we're
we
gonna
have
I don't know if we're gonna have a post-credit scene after this, but Jason, we appreciate you so much.
No, thanks for everything that you guys do, and I say it every time, and I've told Tyler this many times. Like the thing that we love about all this, like you guys do a great job of fostering that in people and fostering like the good elements in the fan base and in the soccer culture, and we need it because it's very easy for that to go a different direction. And I hope that it never does fully, and I hope that you guys keep doing what you do for as long as you possibly can, and we're gonna do the same with SDH and 92.9 and all the different hats I wear, and we'll keep fighting a good fight. That's what we do.
More power to
Thanks
all
for
of
everybody for joining. I mean, we got 300 people on here right now, and spaces are filled after every game. Like that's just shows that the fan base wants a winner.
Yeah, that's good, and that's what fuels it. So hopefully, hopefully these signings go out, and I can't wait to see Moranchuk with this team, and I can't wait to see who the other designated player will be, and then it's gonna be a lot of fun. Hopefully,
Agreed.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
That's all we can do.
Yeah, Jason, truly appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.
See you guys.
Thanks so much. See you, buddy.
See ya.
Good stuff.
Well, yeah, I don't have Ryan Reynolds to show up for the post-credit scene. If that's
I was going to say our post-credit scene maybe could just like we'll hit the credits and then we'll come back and we'll just all be playing like college football.
Yeah, I think that's all we
it.
have here left.
That was good stuff. That was good stuff. Obviously, y'all know this. Love talking to Jason. Love chatting with Jason. I'm not saying anything that you people don't already know, but he is a wealth of knowledge. And just is always going to give you, another way of looking at things. And that's awesome because, like he said, this is a great place to be as a fan base, even though it might be a little painful right now. Well, it's really painful right now. What are we doing, Tommy?
Just
I feel like I'm
I didn't have my Deadpool mask, so I just grabbed my stuff. I'm still in wrestling mode from the weekend, so hit the music. And let's call it a day.
Let's do it.
I only put this on for the Battered Herons, so you should feel this is.
I appreciate that. I saw they were looking for a new co-host.
Yeah, I applied.
All right, well, we'll see you back here next week.
No Leagues Cup to talk about next week.
No Atlantic United Leagues Cup.
Thank God. I don't need any more Open Cup. I don't need any more Leagues Cup. I can't handle them anymore. I can't handle any of these cups anymore.
Heart cannot take it. But hey, the women's national team could win Olympic gold on Saturday.
I just made brunch plans for that game.
Oh, good. There you go. Get you a mimosa. Have a good time.
Yeah. A golden mimosa.
Post-credit scene, not really.
Oh, no, we're done. Okay. Just hit end, damn it.
See you guys.
See ya.